and double standards and cowardice, frankly. A lot of the people who have been so vocal, either by joining marches or Hollywood stars.
Don't you think it's quite remarkable that Israel and the United States, which have been deeply involved in executing a genocide in Gaza, think about that.
I've never said that. I've never said
Furthermore,
that. I've never said that. I've never actually said I believe it constitutes a genocide. I think that you've heard genocidal language from people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, but I don't think it can be constructed.
The major reason they've had enough is because of the state of the Iranian economy. And what has happened here is that over time, with economic sanctions, it's not. Why is it a threat to the United States?
Well, maybe because the Ayatollah has repeatedly threatened the United States publicly.
He can repeatedly threaten the United States till he's blue in the face. Who cares? The question is, does he have the military capability to do harm to us?
Look, what you're about to watch is one of the most revealing exchanges I've seen in a while about how the left views Iran, Gaza, and American foreign policy. And guys, it is wild. You've got Piers Morgan going up against someone who is basically carrying water for the Iranian regime, while simultaneously calling what's happening in Gaza a genocide. The mental gymnastics are genuinely insane. And here's what makes this so interesting. Piers actually pushes back. He's not letting the guy just spew propaganda unchallenged. You're going to see him call out the hypocrisy in real time. Pay attention to how this guy defends Iran's brutality while attacking Israel for defending itself after October 7th. The double standard is so blatant, it's almost funny. Almost. Let's get into it.
And double standards and cowardice, frankly. A lot of the people who have been so vocal, either by joining marches or Hollywood stars or wherever it may be, big media figures, racing to be front and center in supporting the Palestinians, for example, in Gaza, have been notable by their silence about the Iranian protesters risking their lives, quite literally, for freedom and democracy. Now, it may well be, I'm sure it is, that obviously it suits Israel and America that this uprising is happening. Obviously, they would like it to be successful and that the Ayatollah gets removed and the mullahs are gone. I'm sure they would like that, and I'm sure that they're doing everything they can to promote it. But that doesn't mean that there isn't already an organic uprising going on, that the people of Iran have had enough after 47 years of this religious rule, and they want to change. Those two things can be true at once, right?
I want to ask you a question, Piers. Don't you think it's quite remarkable that Israel and the United States, which have been deeply involved in executing a genocide in Gaza, think about that, a genocide in Gaza, are now making a lot of noise about how terribly the Iranian government is treating the protesters? Isn't this remarkable hypocrisy in your mind?
Well, they're very different circumstances, because what you have in Iran is
That's
Iranian.
for sure. That's for sure.
Well, they are different circumstances, aren't they? In Iran, you have an uprising not dissimilar to what we've just seen in Syria, actually, which ended up toppling Assad very quickly, with Syrian people leading that, to the extent that Putin just disappeared because he could feel that this was going to happen. And I feel, I hope on behalf of the Iranian people that they are successful. I think they might be this time round. But I don't see a comparison to what has happened in Gaza. In Gaza, but notwithstanding the history of the conflict there, you had, on October the 7th, 2023, you had one of the worst terror attacks of modern times, with 3,000 Hamas terrorists causing total mayhem across the border in Israel, murdering 1,200 people, kidnapping 250-odd people, including a baby, a Holocaust victim, and so on, taking these people back into depravity in Gaza. And then you've seen Israel perpetrate a retaliatory attack on Hamas, which I think had gone until the ceasefire way too far. I think that they broke a lot of laws themselves in terms of starving the populace in Gaza, in terms of just killing way too many civilians, killing so many journalists, banning international media from getting in. So many things that they did which I didn't agree with at all. But I don't see a comparison to what we're seeing in Iran. Do you?
Piers, I'm shocked at your rhetoric. In the past, when we have talked, you have readily recognized that the Israelis are committing genocide in Gaza.
I've never said that. I've never said
Furthermore,
that. I've never said that. I've never actually said I believe it constitutes a genocide. I think that you've heard genocidal language from people like Smodrich and Ben-Gvir, but I don't think it can be constructed as a genocide, because I don't think people who actually wage a genocide are interested in doing ceasefires, which we've now had for, thank God, quite a few weeks and months. Why would you if you're waging an actual genocide against a populace?
I want to switch the gears for a second and make another point. You talk as if these protests in Iran are simply due to the Iranians' dissatisfaction with the government, and that it has nothing to do with the United States.
No, I didn't say that.
The reason these people are so dissatisfied...
I said the two things can be true at once. It can be true that America and Israel have a vested interest in this regime being toppled and are very happy to see the protesters rising up against it. And it may well be that they have Mossad on the ground and they've got American intelligence people on the ground. I'm sure all of that can be true as well. I'm not saying they're not involved at all, but I do happen to think that the overarching motivating factor for this uprising is the people of Iran have had enough of the state of this country under 47 years of very autocratic, religious, controlled life. They've had enough of it.
I don't think that's the major reason that they've had enough. The major reason they've had enough is because of the state of the Iranian economy. And what has happened here is that over time, with economic sanctions, we have wrecked the Iranian economy. We are principally responsible for driving these protests. People are protesting the state of the Iranian economy, which is in dire straits, in large part because of American sanctions. Had there been no American sanctions, there would be no protests today.
But what about the appalling human rights record of this Iranian regime for 47 years? The appalling repression of women, the appalling repression of its people, the political prisoners, the way they treat their people.
I'm not defending how they treat their people. I'm just telling you, I think that how they treat their people is playing a small part in causing these uprisings today.
Really? How do you know that? How do you know that?
Because if you read virtually all the news accounts coming out of Iran where people are talking to Iranians, it's quite clear that it's the economy that's driving the train here.
That's not the only reason
on my part, or a controversial argument. It's not the only reason, but it's the major reason.
Well, you
think all of the variants.
Your assessment is it's the major reason. My assessment, talking to Iranian people about this, is it's a whole series of reasons, but one of them, and it seems to be the key motivating factor, is the appallingly repressive side of this regime.
Okay, so this is where it gets absolutely ridiculous. This guy just sat here and told Piers Morgan with a straight face that the Iranian people aren't protesting because of 47 years of brutal repression. They're not protesting because women get arrested for showing their hair. They're not protesting because political dissidents disappear in the middle of the night. No, no, no. According to him, they're protesting because of American sanctions. Like, do you hear how insane that is? He's literally blaming America for the fact that Iranians are rising up against one of the most oppressive regimes on the planet. And here's the thing. This is classic blame shifting. It's what these people do every single time. America, bad. Iran, good. Israel, bad. Hamas, good. It's so predictable at this point. He even said, and I want you to catch this, he said the repression is playing a small part in the protests. A small part. Dude, people are literally being beaten in the streets by morality police for not wearing hijabs correctly. And that's a small part? The regime executes protesters. They shoot women in the face for demanding basic freedoms. But yeah, sure, the economy is the real issue here. And then Piers nails him on it. He's like, how do you know that? Because that's the question, right? How does this guy know what's driving the protests? Is he on the ground in Tehran talking to protesters? No. He's reading news accounts, which, by the way, probably means he's reading regime propaganda or Western outlets that repeat it. Meanwhile, Piers is talking to actual Iranian people who are telling him the opposite, that it's the repression, that it's the lack of freedom, that it's the fact that their country has been turned into a prison state run by religious fanatics. But notice what he does next. He pivots to sovereignty. It's not your business or my business to interfere in Iran. Oh, okay. So when the Iranian regime funds Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis to destabilize the entire Middle East and murder civilians, that's fine. That's sovereignty. But when America sanctions them for doing that, suddenly we're the bad guys. Do you see how this works? It's always America's fault. Always. And then, and this is my favorite part, Piers brings up Ukraine. Because if you believe in sovereignty so much, you should be against Russia invading Ukraine, right? And watch what happens. The guy immediately justifies it. Well, NATO was threatening to bring Ukraine into the alliance. So sovereignty only matters when it's Iran or Russia. When it's Ukraine, a country that actually wants to join the West and escape Russian domination, suddenly sovereignty doesn't matter anymore. Suddenly, it's okay for Putin to roll tanks into Kyiv. This is the game they play. And Piers sees right through it. These people don't have principles. They have sides. They're anti-America, anti-Israel, and pro-anyone who opposes them. It doesn't matter if it's Iran, Russia, China, Venezuela, whoever. As long as you're against the West, you get a pass. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about that.
It's the appallingly repressive side of this regime on their life. If you go back to life in Iran in 1975 and compare it to today, it is chalk and cheese. It's become a dark, depressing, repressive regime with extreme religious autocracy leveled against the people. And yes, the economy is in a terrible state, but that's not just down to sanctions. And the sanctions are as a direct result of the way the Iranian regime has behaved, particularly in the Middle East, where it's sponsored terrorism through the Houthis, through Hezbollah, through Hamas. It's been one of the main organs for all the terrorism in that region ever since it came into power.
Piers, what you're missing is that the previous regime, you were talking about going back to 1975 when the Shah was in control. The previous regime was repressive. It was hated by the population. And the reason you got a revolution in 1979 and you got Khomeini in charge was because Iran was such a repressive regime under the Shah. I agree that the regime under Khomeini is repressive. My view is that's the Iranians' business. It's not your business or my business to go in to Iran and rearrange the politics of Iran. I believe in sovereignty. I don't like the idea of countries coming into the United States and interfering in our politics, and I'm sure you as a Brit don't want other countries interfering in British politics. The same basic message
do you feel that way about the way Vladimir Putin's interfered with Ukrainian politics and life?
I think that Vladimir Putin went into Ukraine, as you know, because NATO was threatening to bring Ukraine.
Yeah, but he's interfering directly.
Alliance.
He's interfering directly in the politics of his neighbouring country. By your argument, you've just expressed to me, you should be against that.
No, I think there are certain circumstances where you do that. I understand that full well. I understand that when we went to war against Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan in World War II, we were going to end up doing regime change once we won the war. You do that on occasion. But the idea that a country like Iran, which is no threat to the United States, or a country like Venezuela, which is no
Iran is no threat to the United States.
No, it's not. Why is it a threat to the United States?
Well, maybe because the Ayatollah has repeatedly threatened the United States publicly.
He can repeatedly threaten the United States till he's blue in the face. Who cares? The question is, does he have the military capability to do harm to us?
Well,
the answer is
they've had the military capability.
If it wasn't for the...
But what they have done, they funneled a huge amount of money into propping up terrorist organizations all around the Middle East, all of whom are wedded to the obliteration of Israel, which is America's main ally in the region, and has a lot of interest, mutual interests. Now, you may not like it, but that's the reality. And so, yes, they represent a threat to one of America's main allies and to Americans who live in Israel, for example, to American service people who work with Israelis. Of course they do.
All right, so let's break down what just happened here. You had someone who opened this conversation by calling what's happening in Gaza a genocide, and then spent the rest of the time downplaying 47 years of Iranian brutality. Think about that for a second. Israel responds to the worst terror attack in its history, October 7th, where Hamas murdered 1,200 people, kidnapped babies, raped women, burned families alive. And this guy calls it genocide. Meanwhile, Iran executes protesters in the street, hangs gay people from cranes, stones women to death, funds terrorism across the entire region. And he's like, well, that's their business. We shouldn't interfere. Are you kidding me? Like, the hypocrisy is so thick you could cut it with a knife. And this is exactly what Piers was calling out at the very beginning. Where are all the protests for the Iranian people? Where are the college kids marching for women in Tehran who are getting beaten for not covering their faces? Where's the outrage from Hollywood? Where are the Instagram infographics? Crickets. Absolute silence, because it doesn't fit the narrative. You can't blame America or Israel for what Iran is doing to its own people, so they just ignore it. And here's what makes this even more infuriating. This guy admitted that Israel and America want the Iranian regime to fall. Okay, so what? That doesn't make the protesters any less real. That doesn't make their suffering any less valid. The fact that it benefits America and Israel for this regime to collapse doesn't mean the uprising is fake. Both things can be true at the same time, which is exactly what Piers said. But these people can't accept that. Everything has to be a CIA plot. Everything has to be American imperialism. They can't just admit that maybe, just maybe, the Iranian people are sick of living under a brutal theocracy. And the sanctions argument? Dude, the sanctions exist because Iran funds terrorism. They fund Hezbollah. They fund Hamas. They fund the Houthis. They've been trying to develop nuclear weapons for decades. What is America supposed to do? Just let them do whatever they want? These are consequences for their actions. And by the way, if the Iranian regime actually cared about its people, they could stop funding terrorists and negotiate. But they don't, because they're more interested in destroying Israel and spreading their influence than they are in feeding their own population. Piers absolutely won this debate. He called out the double standards. He pushed back on the propaganda. He made the guy defend Putin invading Ukraine after claiming to care about sovereignty. And most importantly, he didn't let him get away with calling Gaza a genocide while ignoring actual atrocities in Iran. That's the kind of pushback we need to see more of, because the moral rot in Western discourse right now is insane. We've got people defending some of the worst regimes on earth while attacking the only democracy in the Middle East. And they do it with such confidence. It's unbelievable. So look, if you're paying attention to what's happening in Iran right now, I hope those protesters succeed. I hope they topple that regime. I hope they get their freedom. And I hope the same people who were out marching for Gaza realize how much they've been played. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Are you seeing the same double standards I'm seeing? Because it's everywhere you look, and it's only getting worse. All right, that's it for this one. Welcome to MB. Stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.